Sometimes when I'm thinking about us, before we got lost and we parted, back to back we would carry on and we'd do anything for what we started. But this time we could break. I'm running dry, everything's the same. We'll try tonight. This time we're not safe and sound, not safe and sound. What if I'm no good for you? What if you're no good for me? Yeah. What if I'm no good for you? What if you're no good for me? Yeah. Sometimes when I'm reasoning about us, I know you got me, it's so effortless. Back to back we would carry on and we'd do anything for what we started. But this time we could break. I'm running dry, everything's the same. We'll try tonight. No, this time we're not safe and sound, not safe and sound. What if I'm no good for you? What if you're no good for me? Yeah. What if I'm no good for you? What if you're no good for me? Yeah. What if I'm no good for you? What if you're no good for me? Yeah. What if I'm no good for you? What if you're no good for me? What if I'm no good for you? What if you're no good for me? What if I'm no good for you? What if you're no good for me? What if I'm no good for you? What if you're no good for me? What if I'm no good for you? What if you're no good for me? What if I'm no good for you? What if you're no good for me?
Welcome to the stream. Welcome to the stream, everybody. Welcome to the FPV news with JB and ItsBlunty. How you doing, Blunty?
Good, Joshua. How's it going today?
I'm doing really good. And I'm really excited about the news today. You put together a ton of stuff.
That's good, because I literally this morning was like, man, I don't have enough. I don't have enough stuff. So
No, if you put that all together today, then I'm even more impressed. There's some really interesting stuff this week. And before you tell us what it's all going to be, let me take a minute and say hello to you out there in the chat. There's, who was it? His professor moved his final so he could be here, which I think is exactly where your priorities should be, right?
yes, absolutely.
I thank you guys for coming out. We are going to go over all of the FPV news that's come out this week. A lot of people discussing the song, Blunty. Now, I want to be clear. We're not changing the song.
Nope.
A lot of people are fans of the song. Some people maybe not so much. You have an opinion? Be honest.
I think it's a good song. I like the song.
People accuse me of... Go ahead.
I often get mistaken for a metalhead. Things
It's
like
true.
that.
I mean, you with your beard.
Yeah, but I am probably the opposite. I mean, I like melodic metal a little bit, but yeah, I'm definitely an electronic kind of guy. So the song is right up my alley, and if you don't like it, sorry.
Hey, I mean, people accuse me of listening to girly music. I mean, I listen to some girly music. Sometimes I'm in the mood for it. My son has been playing Doom Eternal. And he said, today I did the unthinkable. I turned off the music while I was playing Doom Eternal. And I was like, well, because that soundtrack, I don't know if you know that game, but that soundtrack is like, it's so much a part of the game. He was like, yeah, I just picked this one track and I put it on YouTube and I put it on repeat because that's all I wanted to hear. I was like, okay. So now
nice.
that's hardcore music. All right. But we're not here to talk about music. We're here to talk about the news. Blunty,
Yes.
what do we got on the news this week?
All right. Well, we got a good news show for you. So right up at the front, we'll just go ahead and maybe just go ahead and say, we lost a member.
Not
we
good
lost,
news.
Yeah, not good news. We lost a member of the FPV community, and we just wanted to shout out, rest in peace to Sean the Dawn, FPTV. We have a GoFundMe. We have linked in the description, along with everything else we'll talk about in the show. If you want to support his family and support him and stuff, and take care of all his stuff, there's a GoFundMe there for his funeral and his family support that you can donate to and help him out. So help his family.
Yeah.
out, so.
Yeah, Sean the Don, got to meet him. I actually met him for the first time at Rampage just last week. Was a pretty cool guy. And his FPTV project and their Discord server and their streaming stuff, all really, really cool. And then just randomly passed away. So unfortunately, this is legit. I don't promote GoFundMes most of the time, but in this case, it's 100% legit. He's had a wife and I think 5 kids. One of them 3 months old. Ouch. So I haven't donated yet. I will be donating, and if you have anything to spare, sounds like he was a great guy, and his family definitely needs it.
Yeah. So yeah, if you guys can, definitely go support that. But otherwise, it's unfortunate to hear. And
yeah.
So we can just.
Victor Hugo says, why did he pass away, or how did he pass away? I don't know what details have been released about that, but
the GoFundMe says any news or updates they'll be sharing are available on the GoFundMe. So if you keep an eye on that page, they should be able to provide any updates. There.
Yep. So anyway, and I said this on my live stream, but I'll say it again. If there is something to take from it, when I think about the last things that were happening in his life, he went to Rampage. He was having a great time at Rampage. Then after Rampage, he went back to Atlanta with Cricket and Slat and Steel and Ciotti, and just spent, I believe they were in the middle of a weekend of ripping balls all over Atlanta with his family. And I hope that he had, was just having an amazing time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's
Slat in the chat says he passed away due to natural causes. So that's a friend of his. Anyway, I don't want to start off on a down note, but obviously that's an important thing to share. Link to that GoFundMe in the video description. Anybody who can spare a little, it definitely will be appreciated. Anyway, Let's move on. What else are we going to talk about this week, Blunty?
All right, so this week we have EdgeTX we talked about previously. There is a fix pushed to EdgeTX from Dominic Clifton for the QX7 inverter mod. So we'll talk about that and how that fixes things. So no soldering now required for...
Finally, not finally, EdgeTX immediately producing positive results. So super excited about that.
This PR was actually already accepted. So.
Yeah, whoa. OpenTX, when was the last time they accepted a pull request? I don't know. Probably was not that long ago.
So UAVTech also has some results to RC link testing. So we'll go over those, take a look at the charts and stuff. Definitely want to go check that video out.
Yeah, find out about latency of Ghost, Crossfire, Express LRS, and which one's got the best latency and jitter.
Yeah. Dominic Clifton has a new SPRacing H7RF board with Express LRS built in over SPI, and he's taking pre-orders. So we'll tell you how to get that and the specs of that thing.
Built-in receiver. Beautiful.
Yeah. The OpenVTX project is a cool new project we'll talk about. That's a full-featured open source firmware for cheap VTX and possibly other cheap VTXs in the future. If you were looking for something like that, we'll explain what that means and what that'll do for you. That's a pretty cool project.
Yeah. Why would you want open source firmware running on your VTX? We'll dive into that a little bit. Kevin Plaizier is in the chat and says we've misspelled his name in the show notes. So I'm going to go fix that right now. Sorry about that, Kevin.
We'll have a WeBleed update for week 5. So we'll talk about who won there. No spoilers yet.
Okay. Yeah, because the first couple weeks it was you, and you were like, "Hey, guess who won the WeBleed Whoop series?" And I was like, "Oh, who?" And you were like, "I did." And then last week you didn't win, so we'll see if you turned it around.
Yeah. IGAL 3 registration is open. We've talked about IGAL in the past, and now there's a new IGAL on the horizon. We'll tell you how to get into it. Pretty cool.
You can play a game of quad with people around the world.
Yeah, for cash and prizes.
Mm-hmm.
We'll talk about a weird issue with the TX16S. The default model on that radio has a weird output curve that may be making your quad fly weird.
Yeah. You may not even know it exists.
Yeah. Kevin Plaizier of EmuFlight has won the $25,000 Lynchpin contest that we've talked about previously, and you did some videos for. So we'll take a look at that and talk about why he won.
And we'll talk about the fact that not only did he win 25 grand, but Terry actually announced that all of the winners would be getting 25. All the finalists would get 25 grand, which was well, we'll talk about that.
Yeah. We have a community spotlight this week. We've got a FPV shop finder for the EU if you need somewhere to shop for your FPV goods.
Mm-hmm.
We've got a Singlecopter project called the Ball Drone with only one motor. We'll talk about how that works. Singlecopter.
Like, how do you keep it from... Okay, I'd love to know more about this. One motor. Isn't that just a helicopter? No, because it doesn't have a tail rotor, right?
Correct, yeah. No tail rotor.
Okay,
just
what defies physics?
One spinning thing.
Okay.
Ken Heron takes a senator for a ride. This is pretty cool. We'll talk about it, but it's an FPV ride to be specific.
When I first... we'll talk about it. We'll talk about it. Ken Heron, if you had to pick one person in the world to give a senator a ride, would it be Ken Heron? We'll talk about it.
OpenHD promises to beat DJI at HD FPV in an open source fashion. And they've actually opened a Patreon for that. So we'll talk about what that means and what they're promising and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah. I mean, depending on how the timing of the episode goes, that may be our rant. We've got another rant kind of held back. We may save it till next week. But when I saw this story, I thought I could rant about this a little bit. And I did a little bit on Facebook. And then I was like, okay, well, maybe you and I will both rant about it just a little bit.
Yeah.
All right. I see Slat FPV down in the chat. Have you seen any of his freestyle?
Yeah,
you know Slat?
Sure. Yeah.
YouTube just decided I needed to see all his videos. I don't know why. He's pretty freaking good. He flew the squares in Atlanta. I don't know if you know that the site I'm talking about when I say the squares. It's anyway, go check out Slat FPV on YouTube. He did pretty good. He did pretty good.
Nice.
Not news, but a little shout out. All right. Let's start off officially. EdgeTX. Do you want to, Blunty, do you want to give us a quick, let me do this part, then you do the technical part, because I think you understand it better than I do. EdgeTX, OpenTX, open source, controller firmware, has been sort of stagnant for a long time. There are all these features that are coming soon in OpenTX 2.4, crossfire shot, support for the Nirvana, support for the Tango 2, support for Ghost, touchscreen support for the Radio Master. I could go on. And OpenTX 2.4 has been coming soon for like more than a year, maybe 2 years. And it had people, and finally a whole bunch of people were like, or at least, one guy was like, hey, what's going on here? And without diving too deep into why, the OpenTX devs basically said, fine, you do it, because it's an open source project. You can just fork it and you can do whatever you want with it. And that's EdgeTX. Finally, OpenTX is moving again, is progressing.
Yeah. Super exciting.
And they have come up with, well, I say they, Dominic Clifton has submitted to EdgeTX a fix for a pretty persistent issue.
Yeah. So currently there's an issue that I think a lot of people are familiar with. There's an inverter problem where you have to add a soldered-in inverter for crossfire or other low latency links. It's essentially because after some testing, it looks like the reason, a lot of people have speculated for a long time, but it looks like the reason is actually that the inverter is just garbage. And so I talked to Dominic Clifton about it, and he thinks they probably spec'd a better one, but when they were doing like cost reductions in the design, they didn't realize that reducing it would actually make this an issue. This is why it's fixed on later radios, but wasn't fixed on like whole series of radios. But anyway, so this inverter causes this problem with the leading edge. And basically on a signal, right, you're looking for 0 or 1. So you're looking for a bottom or a top. And so if you drag up, basically if you're going from the bottom to the top, it takes time to get up there. And so what you're seeing there is the leading edge where it takes the time to go from the 0 to the 1.
Yeah, now, right here we've got this signal, and here's this leading, I'm just going to, I got to put my mouse on it. There we go. Here's the leading edge rising slowly, right? That's what you're talking about.
Right. Yeah, and it seems like basically the shitty inverter causes it to take a long time for that leading edge to happen. A better inverter, changing to the inverter mod, causes it to come up very quickly and have no issue. And Dominic tried changing a resistor and was able to get that leading edge better. But essentially, what he figured out is there's a new mode called 1-bit. And 1-bit mode essentially shrinks down where we're looking. And it says like, hey, let's look a little later and let's look right in the middle and just take that one value, because we know we're going to get it every time, right? We know we're always going to get the value. So let's look right in the middle and just make sure we're getting that value. And that's what we're doing here. So instead of like maybe catching that leading edge and getting the bad info and getting errors like you would previously trying to run too fast, now we can sample right in the center. And regardless, without any hardware change, it does look like that this is working correctly.
And that's the takeaway from this, is that if you have a QX7 and you've already done the inverter mod, well, screw you. You've already, but if you, in the future, you wouldn't have to do the inverter mod on the QX7. It's a software fix that Dominic Clifton discovered.
Yeah, in theory, this would be pushable, and this should be pushable also to OpenVTX for 2.3.12 and stuff, and that sort of thing as well. And this should come in, I believe, some of the builds of 2.3. So right now, there's a build, we've linked the GitHub pull request for this. So if you are one of the kind of people who likes testing nightly firmwares, like super beta stuff, there are 2 builds, 2 binaries in here for 2.3.12 EdgeTX for X7 and X9D Plus. So if you have an unmodded radio without the inverter mod and you want to try this out, you're welcome to download this, give it a shot, and report back and see if you're still having those same telemetry drops on Crossfire or whatever. So yeah,
that's fantastic. It's really cool to see. Like, I think a lot of developers maybe have given up on submitting pull requests to OpenVTX because they anticipate that the pull requests would take forever to get approved or maybe never get approved. And I mean, the motivation of open source development, you're usually not in it to make money. You want to make a difference. And so if there's a project out there like EdgeTX that is merging these pull requests quickly, I think we're going to see just devs coming out of the woodwork to help do cool things that wouldn't have happened without it. And as somebody in the comments points out, I mean, EdgeTX is based on OpenVTX, so you certainly could just merge back as well.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, there's no reason that can't happen. So this is just pushing development, and then anything that needs to be can just be sent right back over. All open source. That's what we love about open source.
Beautiful, beautiful. Well, thank you, Dominic Clifton, for that. For those, I mean, people still buy the QX7, I suppose. I mean, it is sort of on its way out, but it is nice that maybe people won't have to do that.
I think the QX7, the X9D Plus, and the Horus X10 all have this issue. And so any of those radios should be fixed with this. So yeah, again, if you have the X9D Plus or the QX7, there are binaries for you to try out. So if you want to get crazy, and you might have issues. So just make sure you're careful.
All right, I'm waiting for EdgeTX 1.0 or whatever they're going to number it.
2.4. Well, 2.3 something, but 2.4.
They're going to keep the version numbering from OpenVTX.
Yes, that's my understanding.
Good. Thank you very much, Isaac Mitchell, for a $5 super chat. Crunked is awesome. Get Crunked if you can. Crunked is a great tuner, and thank you for that super chat. Thank you, Super Deluxe, for $5 as well. Super Deluxe says Bardwell's my daddy. Why can't? Oh no, somebody else said I want Bardwell to be my FPV mommy, and I was like, why can't I be your FPV daddy? I mean, whatever. It's your kink.
I think daddy has other connotations, but sure.
I mean, but which would I be more likely to be, a daddy or a mommy?
Sure, that's also fair.
I mean, if I had to pick one. Anyway, thank you for the super chat. All right. What do we got next, Blunty?
So UAVTech has a wonderful new video on RC link testing results. He's gone through and used a tool that Alessandro from ExpressLRS developed to do hard testing directly from the radio gimbal to the end directly with like analog signals. So it's like 100% like great, perfect testing.
And let me pause here and interject how cool this is, because people have done latency testing. Like Mark, UAVTech has done latency testing before using the packet spacing in black box logs. But that is just telling you the spacing between the packets. It's not telling you the latency from stick movement to flight controller. And what this tool from ExpressLRS does is, like, you hook the electrical wire coming out of the gimbal, right? And you plug that into your ExpressLRS module, and the module generates a signal that is then transmitted out the controller to the receiver, and the ExpressLRS system measures the end-to-end latency, which is actually... People always talk about, Crossfire is whatever, 6 milliseconds. They're always talking about packet timing, which does matter, but end-to-end latency matters almost maybe more.
Yeah, there's two things.
This is really cool.
Two things. How often do we send it? And then how long does it take to get there?
Right.
So
like the example I've used in the past is, let's say that Blunty, I'm going to send you some letters, in the mail, in the snail mail. I'm going to send you one letter every day. Now you're going to get one letter every day, but there might take a week to get to you. Yeah. That's end-to-end latency versus packet spacing. They both matter. So this is really cool. And he's measuring end-to-end latency.
So something else we could talk about too is like, maybe the mail doesn't come at the same time every day. So that's jitter, right? So if the mail comes at 10 a.m. or 2 p.m. or whatever, I might still get the mail and it still works, but I got it a little late or a little early, and maybe that mattered. So that's the jitter testing that we're looking at here as well.
So he's got a video on his channel. It's linked down below, but I think what we should do is we should look at this PDF summary that he put out showing the data. What do you think? What do we got here, Blunty? Any surprises?
Yeah, so I think the big takeaways that I have here are, so one is, it seems like the other links, like you have Tracer and the Ghost links, are working more at getting that end-to-end latency down, but they're working less at maintaining a good jitter, which is that like the time of delivery. And so ExpressLRS is focusing on time of delivery, which is what you see with the smooth lines, right?
Here's the packet jitter comparison. Let me see if I can zoom in on this a little better.
So I think a good one to look at is the 250s, the Race 250 Pure Race.
Down here, right here.
Yeah, so if you look, if you see ExpressLRS 250 is almost perfectly on the 4 millisecond time frame.
It doesn't have those spikes.
Yeah, and you can see with the other links, especially with like the Ghost Race 250, it's working hard to get that packet rate up, but it's not delivering them perfectly on time. There's a little bit of jitter there back and forth. However, if you look on the left, we have our end-to-end latency comparison. Okay. And if you look at our end-to-end latency comparison, you can see that even on Race 250, it's getting the same end-to-end as ExpressLRS is getting on 500. So presumably, when Ghost 500 is out and working and testable, the Ghost 500 link will be lower end-to-end even than the ExpressLRS 500, because they're focusing more, it seems to be, on that end-to-end.
Well, and I've heard this talked about, like when people talk about graphics card benchmarks, and they talk about your average frames, but then they talk about like your 10% lows, your 1% lows, and they talk about that if your average is good, but then you have dips, that can throw you off. And presumably maybe that's true for RC links as well. That maybe consistency is more important than low number.
So one of the things I think that will really matter is just how the firmware is handling it. Like what does like Betaflight do with the jitter? And I think that's a big thing that they're working on with RC smoothing in the new Betaflight code 4.3.
Good point. Good point.
It is working on like cleaning up that jitter through RC smoothing. And so maybe it won't matter as much that the jitter's there, and the low latency will be fine. The other thing I'll say is I believe that the other major difference is ExpressLRS 500 is on LoRa, where Ghost is on FLRC, FSK.
Well, Ghost Race 250 is on FLRC, but all the other Ghost modes are LoRa.
Yes. Yeah, so the race 250 has the same end-to-end, I believe, because it's FLRC, and it's like the transmission is different.
Yeah. Regardless, very, very interesting data. It's always, and in some sense, there aren't many surprises here. Like the protocols that you would expect to be faster are faster, and the ones that you would expect to be slower are slower. But you can't always assume that's going to be true. Sometimes there are surprises.
Yeah, and it's also just like, I think it's pretty cool to see like how many of these guys are doing really well. Like all these race links are like excellent. I mean, Tracer, Ghost, like all these look really good. And I think it kind of helps users make informed decisions if they want them by looking at these plots and stuff. So.
And certainly, we certainly have to say that this is focusing in the microcosm on one aspect of the signal. I would certainly not choose a control link solely based on these charts, as interesting as they are. I mean, there's other stuff you got to think about.
So Mark says at the end of the video, and definitely is important to notice that, like, you know, there's a lot of different feature sets between all these different receiver links. And for you, feature set may be much more important than these other things. You may not care about 0.2, I guess, microseconds of jitter. Versus like, having Wi-Fi updating from your TX versus from a computer or something.
Right. Captain Barry says, wait until ExpressLRS has FLRC modes too. It's true. ExpressLRS is using the same LoRa chipset as these other guys. And so in the same way that Tracer came out using FLRC encoding or modulation, and Ghost was like, okay, we can do that too. It's not hard. And then they just did it in a firmware update. Presumably ExpressLRS could do that if they felt there was a compelling reason to do it. So...
Yeah, NiceX also points out there is no best at this point. There's only one better at something and one is better at the other. I think that's true for all the links at this point. Some have features, some have jitter, some have latency, some have user support. I mean, some are made by companies and you can refund them. Like, there's so many different pieces to the puzzle, and it's just cool to see more data for that puzzle.
Biggest thing that would cause you to choose one versus the other these days? Availability of the hardware.
Yeah, very
I've seen people going, I can't find Crossfire, I can't find Tracer, whatever. And then other people are like, well, Ghost is in stock. Oh, okay. I guess I'm switching to Ghost.
Yeah.
I don't know these days.
It's true at this point. Yeah.
Yeah. ExpressLRS got them happy model receivers banging them out, or you can flash it to FreeSky, or you can freaking solder your own ExpressLRS receiver. So there you go. Component shortage. Who needs it? All right.
Speaking of components that are not short, for sale now, for pre-order, shipping in the next couple weeks is Dominic Clifton's new SPRacing H7RF board. So Dominic Clifton, Hydra, is making a new SPRacing board, the H7RF, with the H730 processor on it at 520 megahertz. And this has ExpressLRS directly on the board over SPI.
Let's take a look here at this board. Oh, got to zoom in there. Okay, it looks like a flight controller. Why am I impressed? Where's that freaking antenna? Doesn't it have an antenna? Oh, there's the UFL.
Yeah, so it's going to be UFL on this board, so you can kind of pick and choose what you want. Yeah. And then there's a SD card slot there. That the metal is just the SD card slot, like the other SPRacing boards have had. You have both choices for mounting. You can do 2 4-in-1 ESCs. In case that's something you like to do, there's connectors for both.
For like an octo. It's got plugs for 2 4-in-1 ESCs in case you want to do an octo. Yeah. That's the kind of thing only Dominic Clifton would think to do.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's cool.
Yeah, and then just buzzer, LED strip, typical stuff. Lots of UARTs. H7, he's got all your UARTs covered, plenty of pads and stuff. So pretty cool. So right now he's going to sell these for pre-order because he's still in the process of finishing these up. But he's only taking pre-orders for what he has components for, so you don't have to wait a long time. He said hopefully by the end of next week he'll be able to start shipping these guys out. They're 60 euros plus $6.10 for shipping currently. Is what it looks like anyway. If you hop over on the ExpressLRS Discord, we have a link down in the show notes for you for that, and you can message the user Hydra.
Yeah, he's not selling them through his SPRacing store. You have to join the ExpressLRS Discord, and then you have to message him, and he'll sell you one.
This is very early. But yeah, if you want one of the first production runs of these things, you can get it.
Underdog FPV wants to know, is it 2.4 or 900 megahertz ExpressLRS? Very good question.
2.4.
2.4. That's what all the ExpressLRS guys say, and limits.
Yeah, and it's also important to point out that this is the first implementation of Express LRS over SPI. So this will technically be lower latency because you skip the UART connection. Dominic Clifton was talking about how basically he's doing, it's like getting the packet over SPI directly from the receiver and then sending an interrupt right in the processor and shoving that data right in there.
Wow.
So it's almost as fast as you can get it. It's pretty
If
cool.
anybody could do it, he can. He's really a master of hardware and software. In fact, I have to say, we were talking about the connectors. I'm pretty sure this is history repeating itself because the SPRacing F3 was, to my mind, one of the first. It was I'll speak only for myself in my history in FPV. It was the first flight controller that had those SH connectors on it. I was working with the NAS 32 and they had solder pads and pins, servo pins. And then the SPRacing F3 came out and it had these SH connectors, and there was this big debate over whether SH connectors were like secure enough or whether you wanted soldering or pins. And now here we are again. He's still got these SH connectors for his UARTs. Man loves SH connectors. Pretty freaking cool.
Yeah. Brian in the chat says Pixel OSD right on the STM32 as well. I believe that's correct. So there's like the OSD chip is integrated in the MCU.
Yeah. Very cool. Very cool, as usual. Dominic Clifton doing cool stuff.
Yeah.
And he's going to be soldering these up by hand in his living room.
Yes.
That's not quite true, is it? But it's
I was
sort
going
of...
to say, not quite by hand, right? It's got a machine for it. So
He does. But it's like people say, why can't we get stuff that isn't made in China? And I'm not going to go there, right? That's not a debate we're going to tackle. But if you are interested in someone who is literally building these in his house,
yeah,
he has a wave. I've confirmed this with him. He has a wave soldering machine in his house, and he literally makes batches of flight controllers in his house. So there you go. Local.
Pretty cool.
He lives in Spain. So.
Pretty cool. All right, on to the next project. OpenVTX is a new full-featured open source firmware for VTXs. This is a pretty cool little project I just wanted to highlight. And it works on this VTX, the EWRF E7082VM. So basically the AliExpress Banggood special VTX. But if you are worried that they have shitty firmware and they don't work well, now it's only the hardware that's a concern, because now you have
right, which is also probably shitty.
Yes, but now you have nice open source firmware to go on there, and this actually does SmartAudio and Tramp. So yeah, pretty cool.
I'm pretty excited by this, to tell you the truth. The fact that it runs on shitty hardware, like that's just the reference design for the very first implementation. Open source VTX hardware that you can run, or open source VTX firmware that you can run on cheap, widely available hardware is kind of exciting to me. If only because it has SmartAudio and Tramp support. And like, if you've got a Ghost module and you want to hook your VTX up to it, then you have to have Tramp support. And maybe the VTX you want to use doesn't have that. I think it's pretty cool, and I think there's potential there to see the same kind of progress that we see in Express LRS happening in the VTX world. Like, it would be really cool if this spawned a good reference design for VTXs, and we got some interesting open source capabilities out of our VTXs.
I will point out, I think Jai Smith is one of the main people on this contributions for OpenVTX, and he's one of the main guys working on stuff for like the transmitters and different things for Express LRS as well. So I think this kind of spawned out of the Express LRS group of people.
Nice. Nice. So it's still, I mean, at the end of the day, are you unhappy with what your VTX firmware? I think there's less room to do cool things with VTXs compared to control links. Like a VTX, basically all it has to do is retransmit the signal. But who knows what these guys are going to come up with? Interesting integrations and stuff. Who knows? That's the beauty of open source.
Yeah, very cool.
Very cool. So there's a link to that down in the video description. Sort of watching that going forward and seeing where it goes. Right now it's just kind of a novelty, I think. Okay, Blunty. Now it's time for the part of the show everyone's been waiting for. The WeBleed FPV Week 5 results.
Yes.
In weeks 1, 2, and I think 3, your team won. In week 4 last week, you got second place, and people said, well, that's because Blunty sat out. You guys rotate out a seat every week. One guy sits out.
Yeah.
And your teammates kindly said, well, we would have gotten first if Blunty had only been racing. And this week you were racing. Did you win?
No, we got second. The Decepticyans got first again, so congratulations to them. It's interesting, that actually puts us only 3 points away in the upper leaderboard, so
wow,
it's going to be pretty close racing.
It's getting tight.
Yeah, it's going to be pretty close.
How many more races are there before a winner is crowned?
There's 3 more races.
Wow, so they could catch you for that $3,000 prize purse. They could catch you, theoretically.
They could, yeah. So basically how it works is once we get to week 8, it's motocross rules. So whoever wins the last week, if we tie, will actually go to the thing. So if we end up tying, it'll be them who wins, because they'll have to win in week 8, if we both get first and second again. But basically at the last week, then we just do relays against each team. So even if you're in 7th place, your team can relay all the way up in the last...
theoretically.
In the finals, all the way up to the money if you wanted to. So that's what our team did last year. We were in 5th, I think, and then we won 2 sets of relays to get to 3rd, and we actually won money. So
wow, that's really impressive. I mean, by the time you get to the finals and you're down in 5th, 6th, 7th place, the chances of you suddenly you get in the eye of the tiger and pulling it out, probably. I mean, why didn't you get the eye? If you're going to get the eye of the tiger in round 8, why don't you get the eye of the tiger in round 5? So that's really impressive.
Yeah. It's a lot of fun, man. I really enjoy this competitive racing stuff, especially on the sims. Is pretty neat because so many people can compete. So lots of fun. Yeah,
it's the beauty of sim racing. I think sim racing got a big promotion during the pandemic when everybody was locked down. In fact, DRL even raced all their races in simulator. But sim racing is just really, it's great how accessible it is, and it's great to see people putting actual prizes and actual money up instead of just we're gonna have some fun.
So speaking of sim races and DRL, we also want to shout out the DRL Tryouts winner from this year, Leon Schubert, Halo Walker 03. If you guys know Halo Walker, you'll know he's been in the scene for a minute. He's currently a DCL pilot. He's also was hot on the heels of the Tryouts last year. That's where I know him from, was watching him in the Tryouts last year. So very cool to see him pull this off.
I know him from my Discord server. I've actually raced with him in Velocidrone. We played Velocidrone Combat, and I'm not going to say I held my own because I didn't. He destroyed me. He's really good.
Yes, he's really good. I've watched him practice DCL, and he's amazing. So very cool to see.
We have to ask. He's a DCL pilot. DCL is a commercial thing. Now he's a DRL pilot. Is he going to leave DCL? Does anybody know?
Yeah, it does seem like that'll be the case. I think he wasn't 100% sure, but I think he's working all that contract stuff out now. So.
Yeah, there's going to be some contract stuff, and we don't know anything, but we can certainly speculate. DCL is... I'll speak for myself. DCL is team racing. DRL is individual racing. There are fewer DRL pilots, and DRL feels more like you've gotten into this television show and you're going to compete for the season. I think if I had to choose, I would probably pick DRL. Not because DRL is better racing. I'm not saying DRL is better than DCL. Just as an individual pilot, I feel like there would be more. I would guess there's more money just because there's fewer pilots, and there's a little bit more sort of prestige in being that guy, as opposed to one of many on a team. So yeah. Anyway, congratulations to Halo Walker, and good luck, because there's a really high standard of competition in DRL today.
Good luck. Watch out for Evan Turner.
And Vanover.
And all those guys, to be honest.
But mostly Evan Turner and Vanover. Let's be honest. Sorry, Nerk. Sorry, Gab. Moving on. Speaking of competitions you can get into, a little bit lower pressure than DRL and DCL. The International Game of Whoop. What is the International Game of Whoop, and why should someone join it, Blunty?
So IGAL is essentially the International Game of Whoop. IGAL is put on by FPV Skittles, Daniel Sogano. This is the 3rd International Game of Whoop, And basically, iGal is like a game of horse, but it's modified so that everybody can play it together.
Or a game of quad.
Yeah, exactly. Game of quad. So basically you're competing over the internet. So instead of a player setting the tricks, iGal sets the tricks. And most of them are like sponsored or set by different people in the community. And then you're all competing to do that trick. And if you can do the trick, you don't get a letter. If you can't do the trick, you get a letter. And you get 7 or 8 days to do that and upload your footage from that to the challenge subreddit.
Yeah, we're looking here at some of the history from previous years. There's real cash prizes at stake. There's I think this year I'm going to be sponsoring some gift cards. Last year we gave out one of my Xylo budget builds, a whole bunch of other prizes. It is worth pointing out, you got to be in it for the long haul, because you start with like 290 pilots last year, and it took 40 weeks to eliminate all of them. So it's a long slog, but you're having a great time while you're doing it. Yeah.
Also, this year's over $7,000 in prizes and stuff already. So already double the prize pool from last iGal. And then also I believe there's like weekly stuff. So if you're competing every week, you have the chance to win. So every week you'll have a new challenge and you'll put it up, and once you hit 5 letters, you whoop out, and that'll be your place and stuff. But if you can make it to the end, I believe the winner will get be a Tiny Whoop team pilot, like the last 2.
Oh, nice. And I would suggest, if you're first of all, if you're interested in doing this, no matter how good or bad a pilot you are, just do it. Racing
1,000%.
And competition is so much fun, even if you don't win. So don't let that stop you.
Yes. There's a very low barrier here. It's like you just go submit a video. You just say, hey, this is who I am and I want to enter. And then every week you just send in a video of the challenge. It's pretty easy to set up. Most of them don't require much extra. You just need a whoop and some DVR. So
maybe some gates by the end. I think they were using gates by the end. I don't know if they're required. But I would also say take a look at last year's iGal results. The final weeks are like mind-bogglingly difficult tricks, and the pilots are just so freaking good. It's really cool.
Yes, there's some incredible piloting going on, that's for sure.
Yeah. That's an interesting suggestion, CH3 FPV. They should do like 3 events a month so more people can enter. Or maybe they could, I'm not trying to tell them how to run their event. It's kind of cool that it's this marathon event. Maybe they could like break it down, and instead of doing 300 pilots, they could do like 100 pilots and then just do another one for the other people who want to enter. I don't know.
Yeah.
It's kind of cool. We'll see it go so long, though.
Yeah, it's pretty neat. Definitely exciting. So if you're interested in there, get in there and submit your entry. You got to put in a registration and make a video. And that deadline is July the 2nd for entry. So got a little while.
Let me get a couple more super chats out of the way before we continue. Bailey FPV, thanks for $5 New Zealand dollars. When COVID's over, come to New Zealand and fly with me. I actually would love to visit New Zealand. Now, I hate traveling and I hate long plane rides, so I probably never will. But of all the countries in the world that I've never been to, I actually think New Zealand looks really like a really interesting place to visit. I would love to say hi to Bruce Simpson while I was there, I realistically, that's not going to happen. But thank you for the invitation. The Diesel Girl, thank you for $5 for Blunty's Glorious Beard Care Fund. Ahmad Butler, $10, no message. And Michael Hill, $5, no message. Okay, let's continue. We got a weird one for this one, Blunty. This one was handed to me by Armando Gallegos, who is the co-founder of 533 and Evan Turner's fleet manager. And he sent me this link to this Facebook page in the 533 pilots group where a person had a Radiomaster TX16S, and by default the model had this weird curve, a custom curve on it, which basically means that your Betaflight rates are all whacked up. And a 533 pilot would obviously have noticed this because they fly the 533 rates, and so they're really used to how their rates feel. I never experienced this because I just copy my I've been copying my models forward since, the Tyrannus days. So I don't use the default model. But if you have a Radiomaster and you used the default model that came on it, you should look in your output screen Is this an output? In your input screen, sorry. And if there's a custom curve there, frickin' get rid of it.
Yeah, that's the big thing to say is that, yeah, seems to be the default model. So for some reason, the radio comes with the fresh flash comes with this model in it. With that flat spot on the curve, which is very odd. But I've seen this too in troubleshooting, and I was like, why is there a curve on this radio? It's kind of hard to know.
Yeah.
So I guess now we know that, yeah, for some reason these Radio Master radios are coming with that by default. So the fix just is make a new model, pretty much, right?
Yeah, if you make a new model, it won't be there. Or you could just go into the curve, and instead of having where it says custom, just get rid of that. Change it to normal, whatever.
Yes.
According to some of the people on this thread, they've reached out to Radio Master. I have not personally reached out to them because no good reason. But why is Radio Master doing this? There's no good reason to do this. They should fix it.
Yeah.
Hopefully they will.
Just so somebody said they made new models and this persisted. If that is the case, then like you said, you can go in and remove the curve from the input. I mean, you can also go into the curve screen and remove the curve if you want to do that too.
Yeah.
Just in case you have persistent issues with this.
Yeah. Okay. I haven't made a new model in literally 4 years. Like I'll just because I have all the custom aux modes and stuff.
Oh,
so I'll just
right.
when I went from FreeSky to Crossfire, I just copied my FreeSky model and then made a couple changes to get Crossfire, and then when Crossfire to Ghost, I just have copied the same model for years. So, is the issue from Radio Master or OpenTX? Asks MC's Creations. Well, we've specifically had it reported under Radio Master. Have you heard of any reports of anybody else doing it?
No, as far as I can tell, it's under the specific like Radio Master flash. You know, it looks a little different than standard OpenTX.
Yeah,
it seems to be their custom flash version of OpenTX.
Okay, all right. I think it's just a Radio Master thing, not an OpenTX thing. Ryzen says I wouldn't say it's a real issue. I mean, if I've got a throttle, I want a linear throttle.
Definitely a real issue. Yeah.
Like
if you're not getting the correct values, like if you're moving the throttle and it's not moving inside a Betaflight, that would be a problem, and that's what the curve would show. So.
I'm so tempted right now to get my radio and just check to see if this is here. I'm terrified that I'm going to find out it's been there the whole time and I didn't notice. But I'm not going to do that. We're going to continue with the news.
Yeah. So RiseX is the person, who had this in a PM that we've talked about before in the past. He said Radio Master told him it's from creating a new model for airplane. So for some reason, if you make the new model and you pick airplane, they've applied this curve to the airplane model.
They're saying I have to check it on stream.
Might as well.
I mean, I'm sure it's not, because I have never made a new model, but we're gonna check. Let's see. I can't. Mouse FPV asks if I learned with the curve, should I just keep using it?
I'm gonna say no.
I mean, you're gonna have to relearn. Unfortunately, and that's gonna suck, but I would figure out my rates from model. I would go back to I want a linear. I want my rates to be because you don't know what your Betaflight rates are. If you ever change controllers, what are you gonna do? Now, inputs, aileron, edit, no
Try
curve.
throttle.
Yeah, no curve. Throttle. Please don't be there. No curve. Nah.
Okay.
But like I said, I'm going to make a new model right now. So I'm going to do long press, model select, long press, create model. Glider or plane? Oh, I bet it's the wizard.
Yeah.
See, I always skip the wizard. I'm going to make a new plane model.
That's what RiseX was saying, yeah. If the wizard applies it for some reason.
Oh, that's going to be it. What channel is it on? How do I page down? Page, number of ailerons. Okay, fine. Screw this. Okay, good. I don't need to change anything. Can I see? Return. Okay. No, don't create model. Model 10. Oh my god, this is the most stimulating live stream ever. So now I'm going to go model page, inputs, throttle. Nope. It's fine. There's no curve. So I just made a brand new model. Didn't do it. So I don't know how it's happening, but it didn't happen to me.
Okay.
If it happened to you, get rid of it. You don't want
Good to know.
All right. hard-hitting research right here, live on the news.
Yeah, so the takeaway is, if you're using this, it's softening the center of the throttle, right? So that's what Mo points out in the chat, right? It's just softening the center of how that throttle is going to work. So the change would make it so you're actually getting a perfectly linear throttle response instead of having the soft bit in the middle.
Which is what you, I mean, for multi-rotors, for planes, I don't know why you would want a nonlinear throttle, because for planes, like, the throttle is usually not that precise on most planes I've flown, at least. Like, you're okay, I'm going to go full throttle and take off, and now I'm kind of going to cruise, and, you know. But for quadcopters, you really need very precise throttle a lot of the time. And the problem is that different quads have a different hover point. So if you have a custom curve, it's not going to match all your quads.
Yeah, I guess, that would be the big takeaway, is it's not like it's focused around some, like, point that will be the same across all your builds. Yeah. So if you're flying one quad, maybe it'll always feel the same. But if you're switching quads, you're going to have a dead zone in a weird spot. So yeah. That's the reason that's the reason I use a linear throttle. If every quad that I had the exact same hover point, then perhaps you could argue that having a dead spot would give you more control. Well, there's the other issue, though, too, is when you tilt forward, your hover point moves. So then you would have to scale it based on your tilt. So, yeah.
So I just use linear throttle and just deal with it. Anyway, we wanted to get that out there so you can check on that. If yours looks like I showed, then I would suggest fixing it. I would not have a curve. I definitely wouldn't have a curve on throttle. And if you want curves, do it in Betaflight.
Let's say this a different way. If it's not a big deal, it won't matter to change it. If it is a big deal, you should change it. So it might as well change it.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah.
I just want to know my curve. If I change controllers, like if I'm like, hey, my controller broke, I need to get a new one, I don't want my rates to suddenly change. I want my rates to be in the flight controller. All right.
Yes. All right.
There is a curves tab, I know, but we're looking at the inputs tab.
Yeah, the inputs tab. Yeah, the inputs tab is just pulling the curve from the curves tab.
Correct.
So if he goes and looks at the curves tab, there'll be a curve labeled CNT, and that curve has the curve that he's applied to the throttle.
But the point is that, as you're seeing here, the curve has been applied to the throttle. So I guarantee you it's not in the curves tab either. But even if it is in the curves tab, if it is not also in the throttle or the inputs tab, then it doesn't matter. I'm going to go look at the curves tab. It's not there. There's no custom curves. There's nothing. All right. Moving on.
Moving on.
I'm now annoyed with this whole thing. I don't know why.
We've all learned something today, hopefully.
All right.
Congratulations.
Congratulations
to Kevin Plaizier of EmuFlight, who has won the $25,000 Lynchpin contest for his version, his quad, basically. Quad. What do you call it? Dodecacopter. His dodecacopter.
You call it the Lynchpin.
Yes, that's true. So he has built a Lynchpin, and his was a little different than the other designs. He was actually able to make it work with 12 motors. So after watching some of these videos, just going through the video, the stream they did there, it seems like the big issue with the ones that change, some of these designs have 6 motors. There are 4 people who successfully completed this challenge and submitted.
Yeah.
3 of them use 6 motors, and it seems the case is with 6 motors, you have this issue with spin up and spin down time for the motor.
Right. Just to interject, Blunty. Yeah. The motors are reversible. They're in 3D mode. So you have 6 motors, but they're changing direction in mid-flight.
Yes, and it seems like when you're trying to do these large energy changes in the quad, where I'm going to fly forward at 20 miles an hour, stop and fly back at 20 miles an hour, or I'm going to rotate one way and rotate the other way directly. When you're not using 12 motors, when you're only using 6, you have physical time that it takes for those motors to spin down and back up. And that seems to cause issues and oscillations in a lot of these builds. And so while they'll work...
This is Kevin's quad, by the way. We were looking at somebody else's. Here's his with 12 motors. Go ahead, Blunty.
Yeah, and so while it will work, it seems to be much more efficient with 12 motors because of the fact that, maybe not more efficient, but more precise.
Yeah, more responsive.
Yes.
Because some of the motors may spin down to idle, but at no point does the motor have to stop and change direction. Anybody who's flown 3D knows that at that moment when you reverse, there's just a little bit of a stutter. And Kevin didn't take the easy way. Not that any of this was easy, But doing it with reversing motors certainly in some ways simplified the build, just because you needed fewer motors. Kevin's had 12 coaxial, so they're 6 coaxial motors, or 12 motors in a hexa. They're coaxial. And then it can all do all this BS. It can rotate, translate, up, down, any direction, doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Pretty freaking
very
cool. You know, yeah, go ahead.
I was just going to say, so Kevin Plaizier is the one who won the prize for the 12 motors. However, the team was so impressed, Terry and the crew was so impressed that Terry has decided to give all 4 of the finalists, and you might remember we originally reported 3 finalists. All 4 of the finalists now are all going to get $25,000 for their contribution and their work that they're doing.
It was going to be $25,000 for first prize, and then $15,000, I believe, for the other finalists. And Terry was like, "You know what? Is it?" He in the live stream he said, "If that's okay with you, because technically it's not the terms of the contest. Do you mind if we give you more money?" And they were all like, "Yes." It's just very cool to see that. And then, so the 4th person that was added is the person we talked about last time, who was not included originally. And they went back, they looked at his information, and were able to get him into the contest, and were able to award him a win as well. That's Mr. IMP. Mr. IMP. Yeah, I was really glad to hear that, because Mr. IMP, Pete Lampert, I think is his name, he was the very first one to demonstrate a working Lynchpin drone. He banged it together in like a week. And then I don't know the details of what happened, but at some point, he was not one of the finalists, which surprised me. I mean, everyone had a strong entry, but I was surprised to find he wasn't one of the finalists. But it was very nice to hear that Terry, if I understood correctly, Terry decided to also give him the first prize money.
Yeah.
Even though technically he didn't have to, just as an acknowledgement of his contributions.
Peter Hall, just to correct that, I believe.
Mr. IMP. Peter Hall is his name? Who's Peter Lampert?
That's what the Hackaday article says. So.
Okay. Well, anyway, super. I know a lot of people were a little suspicious of whether Terry was trying to rip people off, and for him to voluntarily give the finalists an extra $10,000, so everybody got the same money, and then to pay Mr. IMP, or at least he says he will, seems like a real mensch, if you know what that means. So good for him.
Yep, and it does. And the other thing I'll say is, from the live stream, it seemed like Terry was excited to get all these people together and start talking. You know, he's very much like, "Hey, I'm going to give you all some money. Let's all get together and see if we can move this forward more."
Because that's ultimately his goal. His goal is, he just wants to get these great minds together and then get them to continue to develop interesting products for him. So super cool.
Just to clarify, so we make sure everybody's clear, Josh says, "I thought Terry disqualified someone for open sourcing the code." So that is Mr. IMP, and he was not disqualified. He was brought in and is given one of the 4 prizes.
Yeah, there was. I don't know how much I want to say, because some of it's based on private conversations that I had, and we have such a positive outcome where everyone is getting paid and everyone seems happy. I don't want to sort of mess that up. There was, I think there was a little bit of confusion. Perhaps on Terry's part, because it doesn't sort of come from the open source community, that when Mr. IMP was like, "Hey, I made this cool thing, and now I'm going to tell everyone how to do it." And I think Terry was like, What are you doing? Are you trying to sabotage my contest? Because he couldn't understand why someone would do that. And then later, I know I spoke to some people and was like, "Hey, can we try to explain that this is not malicious? This is just the sort of, we want to get this stuff out there. That's the mindset." And I feel like they probably maybe came to. So there was a little bit of drama there, but everything seems to have worked out in the end. And that's good to know. Yeah,
good stuff.
All right.
So look forward to Lynchpin clones on Banggood in 2 months.
And congratulations to Kevin Plaizier as well, and to all the winners, but him being the official winner, little tiny bit of extra congratulations to him. He's in the chat, actually. Quick Flash in the chat is that guy. So, all right.
Good stuff.
All right,
Community
Monty.
Spotlight.
Yeah.
So this week in the Community Spotlight, we're going to take a look at fpvshops.eu. So if you're in the EU, and you're having trouble, I know a lot of people order from AliExpress and Banggood and get the different labeling of prices and stuff. But if you're trying to shop inside of the EU, you can look up any part or product in any country in the EU, and it looks like you could find somewhere to buy that, and a list of websites you can look for products on. Pretty cool.
Apparently, no one in Germany has my JBF7. I'm trying to find something here. Let's search with Google. Nope. Oh, yes. So they've got a list of. This is a big problem that people in the EU have. In the USA, there's like 3 or 4 really, really large retailers, and it's always there's a bunch of small ones who are also awesome. But it's always a safe bet that if you need to find something, you probably can find it. In the EU, there's a lot more smaller stores, and it can be tricky to find out who's got stock. So it looks like flyingmachines.de does have my JBF7 flight controller. Yay! You can pick your country, and can you search just within the whole EU? Can you just say EU? No, you have to pick a country.
Not sure.
I don't know. Anyway.
Pretty cool.
Yeah, really cool. So if you're in the EU and you're trying to find stuff, this is a great resource. Nothing more to say there.
All right.
Next up, the ball drone, a single copter. How does it fly with only one motor, Blunty? That's what I want to know.
So we went from 12 motors on the Lynchpin. Now we're down to 1 motor. So basically we've got a motor and servos. Essentially it's controlling the vectoring of the thrust out of the single motor and giant propeller through servos to decide how it flies, which direction and where it goes.
And apparently it works, because here it is flying.
Yeah, this is actually V2. This is Mark II of the ball drone. I've linked both Mark 1 and Mark 2 in the show notes. But yeah, it's pretty cool. There's 4 sets of fins, make this thing fly around. And this is so the original product is on Hackaday. I've linked to that. And then also this is Nicola Lego on YouTube, and he actually made an FPV version of this, which I thought was pretty cool. So that's what we're seeing right now.
I mean, I can't be like all that agile, can it, Blunty?
No, this seems to be much more of a like, hey, can we do it sort of thing. And
yeah,
and they did.
I mean, it's kind of cool that they've done it. I wonder what the application would be.
It's also cool that it's like a project. So if you need help with it, Nicola has a website. So if you can read Italian, there's a website here for you. Or translate.
Yeah.
Yep, he's got a guide for you to make a fully 3D printed one. That's his special version.
Yeah. It's pretty cool. I would not have guessed that you could do this. I'm on some level, I'm like, but what's the point? But I guess if the Lynchpin can be cool and not really have a point, I guess this can too.
Yes.
Really cool. Can you freestyle it? MC's Creations not. I doubt that.
No, I imagine it's probably pretty efficient. I don't know. Somebody would have to do testing on the efficiency, but running 1 motor, I'm sure, and some servos is probably pretty efficient. So
I guess you could make an argument like if you wanted to have a single blade like a helicopter, now you have to have a swash plate. You have all this mechanical complexity, right? And this is a case where you can take the advantages of a single blade in terms of efficiency, but you have the mechanical simplicity of a multi-rotor.
Yeah.
Because you just have a motor and a prop. You don't have a swash plate and so forth. That's kind of cool.
Yeah, pretty neat.
Thrust vectoring isn't new. No, that's true, Quadenstein. That's true. Thrust vectoring is. This is the first time I've seen something like this, though, a single copter.
Yeah.
Tom Stanton showed a heli with no swash plate. I saw that. Did you see that video by chance, Blunty?
I'm trying to remember. He has quite a few videos. There's one with the gas power, but I'm trying to remember which one he had.
He used a sensor.
I remember one with 2 rotors. Like
no, it had 1 rotor.
Okay.
He used, I think, a sensored motor, or maybe so he could tell what position the motor was in, and then he would speed up the prop on one side of the rotation. So it was spinning faster frontwise than back, and he would adjust the thrust that way. It's kind of cool.
Yeah.
Weirdly complicated, but all right. We got 2 more, right, Blunty? Ken
Yes.
Heron takes a senator on a ride.
Yes. So Whitney Westerfield is a Republican senator from Kentucky, and Ken Heron was able to get a hold of him and let him fly some drones. So I guess Whitney already flew DJI. He's done a lot of that before. And so he brought him out. He let him fly the Autel Evo 2 so he could see like what other brands than DJI had some things. I know there's issues with import and stuff, so I'm sure he was interested in that. But after he let him fly that, then he let him do a ride-along with the DJI quad.
The DJI FPV.
Yeah.
Ken's such a nut. Here they are with the Autel. Ken's
and actually
doing
with
his
the
thing.
and actually with the custom quad too. So, yeah, he gets to see him do loops and stuff and do flips. And...
I think this is great outreach.
Yes.
I feel like this is a challenge that all lawmakers and regulators have, is finding out like what's really going on out there, and for him to get this ride along and to meet a great guy like Ken, I think that can only be positive, and hopefully that will. I mean, I think that a lot of people don't understand FPV until they get the goggles on their face, and then their mind is blown, and they have a love for FPV that will not die. And hopefully that more people who can have that experience, the better.
Yeah, I think it's super cool. So hopefully he'll tell his friends about it, and more people will want to check it out. So
yeah, Ken is a freaking mad lad, though. He is a mad lad at heart, and so when I first heard, I was like, "Oh, Ken, please be on your best behavior." But I'm sure that's.
Yeah, it was a good video. It was a good video.
All right, well, we'll link that in the video description, and everybody can check that out.
I mean, he did rip the Capitol, but there was a senator with him, so I think that's appropriate.
He presumably had permission.
Yeah.
Hey, it's the people's house. I can rip my house. There you go.
Yes.
All right. We got one more, and this is going to be our rant for the night. It's not officially like a rant, but we always put something a little ranty last. And at first you might say, why are we ranting about this, Blunty? Because it just sounds like great news, doesn't it? What's the news?
Sure. Okay, so OpenHD has released a new project on Patreon. They are developing a new competing HD system to the other major digital HD FPV systems. And they are doing it, basically, they're doing it in private with some of their developers, and eventually will be open sourcing the software and as much of the hardware as possible. So they are promising, based on the specs of the systems that they have been working with, that they can get the specs they've listed, 4K 30, 1080p 60, 1080p 30, those kind of things. They think they could be cost effective and get it under $160 per drone. They're going to do a two-board solution that if one part of the board breaks, you can just replace half the board and not the whole board, which you can't do on DJI because they don't sell them to you.
Right. Things
like that are the ideas. And so currently, they're planning to do this, from what I was told, on the RV1126 Rock Chip SoC, which is a new SoC that's out. And they also signed an NDA with a company that they could not disclose for the other side, which seems like the video encoding portion.
Yeah.
And so everything will be open as much as possible. Everything on the hardware will be open that they can allow open, and everything on the software will be open because it'll run on mainline OpenHD.
Right. So OpenHD, people have always asked, why don't you, what about OpenHD? Will you check out OpenHD? OpenHD is an open source high definition video FPV system. It's based on commonly available Wi-Fi chipsets, but it doesn't use Wi-Fi. It just uses the radio chipsets, which are then custom drivers to make them jump through hoops. And the reason I've always stayed away from it has been that it runs on Raspberry Pi, so it's not like this nice integrated solution for FPV drones. And the latency is, I think it's been in the 100+ millisecond range, so it's not really any good for FPV. So it's always seemed like a curiosity to me. Did I get that all right, Blunty? Did I miss something there?
I believe that's correct, yeah. So I'm just seeing a lot of confusion in the chat because I said a number. So, okay. So just to be clear, the $160 per drone figure is just a figure that's based on DJI. So DJI currently, if you're going to buy a camera, connector, and the VTX, you're going to spend around $160 a drone to put DJI on each of your drones.
Yeah.
So they're just saying, the goal is Most people don't want to spend that much per drone. Let's get the number down. There's no finalized number. There isn't even a finished prototype yet.
Right.
So the Patreon here is to take money for basically they want to get motivation to make this finished. So they want to make sure that when they've finished this project, they can say, hey, we want to make this prototype, and we could just send it off to the company and they can get our prototype made as soon as possible. So that's part of what they're asking for people to pay for here.
So here's where I get a little, my first reaction when I heard about this was, so my first reaction was, God bless you. I hope you succeed. Okay. I want this project to succeed. I want there to be an open source high definition system out there that competes with DJI. That would be a freaking dream. But how realistic is that? Right?
I don't know. So here's the hard part about this. So let's talk a little bit about some of the issues. One of the issues is that I've seen people say DiviMath in the chat, because DiviMath is the ones who provide the chipset for SharkBite. However, I'm going to guess that if you go to DiviMath and ask them to use their chipset, they're either going to tell you no, or they're going to charge you a lot of money in likely the 7-figure range. I don't know what they're going to charge you, but it's not going to be free. My understanding from talking to the developers in this OpenHD project is that they're not going to be charged a license fee for this NDA video encoding solution. They have to sign an NDA to use it, but there won't be like extra fees on top like there would be.
They're just going to buy the hardware, basically.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and it'll be closed, and they can't like share what's going on in there.
It's some kind of off-the-shelf ASIC SoC kind of a thing, like a Broadcom chip or something.
Yeah, we can assume like maybe like a Broadcom style chip. Yeah, again, they can't say, and I don't even know because they're NDA'd, but I assume it's something like that where they're talking with some company in private to do this kind of thing.
And I wouldn't be very excited if they were using DiviMath, because I think we can assume that SharkBite represents the absolute state of the art of what DiviMath is capable of developing today. So, and we know the hurdles that Fat Shark had to overcome to get. I mean, I got prototypes of SharkBite units, and they were like they had a problem, and then 3 months later they sent me another one. I felt like they struggled to get a design through manufacturing that was reliable, that would work, and now they've got this, and it is what it is. But I would, I mean, if you're going to compete with DJI, you got to do better.
Yes. Yeah. So that's what they're hoping to do. They're hoping to get it way cheaper. Again, I don't know. People continue to bring up this 160 in the chat. You're not listening to me. It is not. There's no set price. The only
it's going to be. They said it's going to be less than 160 because that's what DJI costs.
Yeah, it could be $60. It could be $100. It could be. We don't know anything about the final price. There's not even a prototype designed yet. There's no license fee, so there's no guaranteed like base cost other than like the price of the Rockchip SoC. So yeah, I just want to be super clear on that. Like, don't be down on this project because we know the price.
Right. We don't know what the price is going to be. That we just know that they intend for it to be cheaper than DJI. And yeah.
So I think the big concern here, right, is just that like, in my mind, it takes a lot more than collecting money on a Patreon to bring a product to market.
Yes.
Like that's like the basic idea here, right? So if you look at like, even if they start to deliver on this, there's a lot of pieces that are going to be in the line. So it's likely not just one prototype, right? They're probably going to need a few prototypes. It's likely not just one design revolution. It's probably a few design revolutions. Yeah. There's also going to be like minimum order quantity when they get these produced. Bingo. There's going to be a cost for the Rockchip SoCs that they put in these. There's going to be, there's all these different pieces of the puzzle. And so those are all going to take money and motivation and pushing. This product is going to require support on the other side. So that's going to require some sort of interaction with people, especially for a digital product. So all these kind of things to come to say, like, I really hope they do this project. I really hope everything works out and everything's great, but I don't foresee this as being the correct solution for producing a digital HD competitor.
100% agree. I'm very confused. And, usually when I'm confused, I assume that means someone else is an idiot and I'm right. And that's not always true. Sometimes I'm confused and I think someone else is an idiot, and it turns out I've just misunderstood their brilliance. But like right now, they're at $134 a month with 19 patrons, and I'm sure they're going to have a lot more after this. But what are they going to get up to? Are they going to get up to, like, how much money? You're going to design a new piece of hardware. how much is it going to cost you to design this, to then get it through manufacturing and get prototypes made? I don't see how you can realistically finance this with a Patreon. And so then you look at the text and they're like, you know what we're going to do? We're going to take this existing product that's open source and it has bad latency, it has these problems. We're going to solve all those problems. We're going to do it. Okay. Why haven't those problems been solved already? Oh, you know why? Not enough money. We need more money to get better hardware. Oh, how are you going to get that money? $200 a month on Patreon, baby. We're going to get there. And I'm like, well, here's the other thing. Here's the other thing, Blunty. I said this to you already. If they succeed at this, this will be $1 million product.
Yeah.
No joke. No joke. If you actually can deliver $1 million product, then why are you not getting VC funding?
Sure.
Why is someone not just giving you $50,000 to develop prototypes?
And I guess here's what I would say too, is like, I know the argument to this, and the argument is like, hey, we want to keep it open. However, I think the problem is if you want to get this to people, if you want people to end up actually using this product going to market and getting through all of the prototyping phases, that's why you have VC, that's why you have backing. Is because there's stuff you run into, there's issues and problems, and you can't, it's like hard to just like wait for money or hope you see more or whatever. Yep. Yeah, I don't know. I think,
Go ahead, Blanchy, sorry.
We want it to be open source. Like, that is obviously the goal. I think there are routes of keeping it open source through VC methods, and if they haven't explored those, then they should.
Well, open source just means the code is open source. The hardware is the hard part.
Yeah.
The hardware is the hard part. And someone says, well, prototypes are cheap. You just get some PCBs made. I don't mean it like a hand-soldered prototype that you make in your basement, because the ability to make one of something that works for you doesn't make it a viable product. You need to be able to make 5,000 of them coming off an assembly line and have only 0.5, 0.5% of those fail. You need to have a product that can be manufactured at scale. And that's expensive. That you don't get just by soldering one up in your basement. The other thing is Metal Dirt Skin says, I doubt there are any $1 million products in the FPV market at all, frankly. I disagree. The FPV market is maybe a few hundred. I've estimated single-digit 100,000s of people around the world. That being said, I guarantee you there are $1 million products in FPV. And if a product like this has application outside of FPV as well, which is like you look at Orca, they're doing their Orca's high definition digital system that they say they're working on. They've said that it's not just for FPV. You got bomb disposal robots. You got all kinds of uses for telepresence. If they do create this, it's but even within FPV.
I think currently Orca is on a $500,000 contract with the United States government for the military. It was, I think the first one was a $50,000 and then the second one was a $500,000, if I remember correctly.
So I just don't, this is my fundamental misunderstanding here. And again, maybe I'm an idiot. I don't understand how you can possibly finance this product with a $200 a month Patreon or a $400 a month Patreon. You need a large chunk of money right now to start developing prototypes and testing them. You need $50,000 today or $5,000 today. You don't need $200 this month and $400 next month, and in 6 months maybe you're pulling $500 a month. I just don't see how you could do it.
Yeah.
I don't see how.
Well, hopefully they could figure something out, because I do want it to succeed. I don't want it to fail.
Yeah.
But yeah, we can only bring you what we're seeing currently. So that's where everything's at.
There you go.
Yeah.
All right. Well, their link is in the video description if you feel like supporting them. This feels more like a Kickstarter to me. And I know I've said this on Facebook, and other people have said, here's why it's not a Kickstart. You don't need ongoing support for this. You need a lump sum of money that you will then moonshot into a product.
I mean, okay, I'll say one other thing too, is like, if you read the description in the Patreon, it says Patreons will also get a repeating discount once hardware is available. How can you provide a repeating discount for hardware before you've even made a prototype?
The hardware doesn't exist.
Like, you don't know any of the price points. You don't know how much the cost, the MOQ is. You don't know anything about the order process or anything. And you're offering a discount already.
Yeah.
I just, I don't see that happening. We'll see what happens.
We'll see what happens. I wish them the best. I just wish Red Cat, get in on this. Red Cat just sold for they just did an IPO for $15 million, right?
Yeah.
Get in on this.
Again, like I said, I think they're going to not take any money and they're going to want to keep this open, but I think that might kill the project. So it's really going to depend on, what happens and how it works out.
Yeah. All righty. Well, that's our little rant for today. And that brings us to the end of the news. We've gone way long. We had 20 minutes over. Thank you, Blunty, for sticking with us. Thank you guys for sticking with us. Long Dollar Bill, thanks for $5 super chat. Doge to the moon. Doge is dead, baby. It's not Doge anymore. It's Shiba Inu coin. Anyway, thank you guys. Blunty?
Cool. That's going to do it for us. If you have any news for next week or whenever, make sure you email news@fpvknowitall.com with whatever you've got going on. And make sure you go to hit the subscribe button down there for Joshua Bardwell's channel here and give a like.
We got to end the stream because my OneDrive has turned itself back on because we were supposed to be done 20 minutes ago. And now the stream is all stuttery. All right, guys. Thank you so much. We'll see you back here next week, 6 p.m. And thank you very much, Blunty. Bye, everybody.
Later, guys.